Welcome to Humanism Now. I'm your host, James Hodgson. A couple of months ago, we spoke with the founders of Happy Humanist Lithuania about their Humanist Accelerator Program that they were running for celebrant teams from humanist organisations around the world. At the end of June 2025, I was delighted to team up with Goethe and Uda, as well as Humanist International, to host the pitch night where we celebrated the teams and showcased the work that they'd done. The event showcased inspiring humanist celebrants and community leaders from around the globe who are working to secure legal recognition for humanist ceremonies, that's weddings, namings and funerals, in their home countries. This week, I'm thrilled to welcome the winning team who walked away with the judges' top prize, the Peruvian Association of Atheists. Founded in 2009, APERAT brings together Peru's non-believers and secular humanists, advocates for a fully secular state, and it is proudly affiliated with Humanist International and the Atheist Alliance International. Joining me are two of APERAT's leading organisers, Adrián Núñez and Iván Antezana. They'll share how Peru's growing non-religious community is organising, what it was like to be part of the accelerator, and how they plan to expand the recognition of humanist ceremonies throughout Peru. Adrián and Iván, thank you so much for joining us on Humanism Now. So this is the first time we've had two guests, I think, since we had the team from Happy Human Lithuania at the start of the Accelerator Program. So would you mind introducing yourselves and perhaps share one idea, book or thinker or experience that first made you realize that you're a humanist? Iván, maybe I'll come to you first.
I became atheist when I was about 10 years old, but I lived many years as a silent atheist. I just kept my disbelieving for myself. However, the religion always is lurking, waiting for some opportunity to enter your life, to disturb your life. So I became an atheist activist back in 2008. And in these nearly 20 years of being a secular activist, I have found that religions really don't need any kind of truth values. They keep being important in society due to a sort of social blackmail. So many people consider themselves to be part of an organized religion, not because they believe in gods or the religious narratives or legends. They just do it because their families, their friends, their colleagues are also part of that religious community. And that is a very strong alienation reason for atheists and non-believers in general. So, and about 7, 8 or more years ago, we began talking in our non-believer circles about how important it is to have non-religious rituals, because rituals are not a religious element. The very human being is ritual. Rituals are in the roots of our humankind. We have been allowing religions to kidnap that concept. Religion has kidnapped also concepts like moral values, and I think the real battle is there in the social ground. So this project was really, well, I don't know if it's right to call it a blessing, but it was a very good opportunity to make those ideas come to reality, and we're very excited with this.
Thank you very much for sharing. Adrián, welcome as well. Same question to you. Please introduce yourself and perhaps share one inspiration that brought you to realize you were a humanist.
I am atheist since forever. I never believed in any religion or something supernatural, I think. But for that reason, I never was curious about atheism or humanism or whatever, because for me it was natural. Until I played bass in a rock band. We used to go to dinner after some rehearsals. In one of the rehearsals, I was asked about my atheism and why I didn't believe in God and everything. We entered in a debate. So I think I debunked most of the affirmations of the two other members of the band. And after I went to my house, I thought maybe something I said wasn't quite right. I could be wrong about something. So I started Googling about atheism and different things. And I found a very big group of atheists in Spanish. So I entered in the group. I met some people. That was in 2007, 2008, maybe. And the thing is that I started to be interested in especially philosophy related to naturalism and to atheism. Then a few months later, I met Bernard Cloutier. Bernard Cloutier was a humanist from Canada. I met him here in Lima. We went to a dinner. He gave me a book called The Colors of Humanism. It was in French, so the name is Les Couleurs de l'Humanisme, something like that. And that book convinced me I was a humanist. Since I was a humanist, because I read it and I found that almost everything that they said about humanism in the book was what I was talking since I was conscious. That's when I started. And a few months later, I was one of the founders of the association. And that's my history.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing. And as mentioned, you were one of the founders of APERAT back in 2009. So how did the organization come into being? Are you the first humanist community in Peru? And how did you find other members to get the group started?
We are the first legal association here, I think, but maybe not the first one in the history of Peru. I think starting 20th century, one guy tried to start a atheist association. He was banned from society, basically. So it was a sad history, but we took the path and we made it. It was not so easy at first because the government or the state didn't want to give us a legal register here, maybe because of the word atheist in the name. But with our lawyer, we solved it.
And what were the challenges that you faced both in your initial founding and since? Have you faced those same challenges in getting acceptance and legal recognition to the state?
Yeah, yes. That was one. Maybe the first issue was that with the legal registration office here, they basically didn't want to accept our papers. In that times, they used to make excuses for different organizations. So you cannot enter into the legal register. You have to appeal until you got it. And then the other issue was to make us as a non-paying taxes association. It is simply impossible for us. We cannot make it.
That's very interesting. But you have made it. You are still here. And as I understand it, the organization continues to thrive, as was seen during the Accelerator program. How big is your membership now, out of interest?
We are about 150 members, but the working team is about 10 people. And the close circle is only 3, Alicia and Billy.
And I understand, I checked out some of the census data before the interview, so which said that about 5% of Peruvians now identify as having no religion. But before we started the call, you said that probably is not accurate. What is the landscape of non-religious, secular, humanist people in Peru in the modern day? Ivan, do you have any thoughts on whether that 5% is accurate?
There are many points of view about religious beliefs because in some way, not everyone wants to publicly come out as atheist. In Peru, at least, the atheist closet is bigger than the LGBT closet. So it's easier for a gay guy, a lesbian woman to come out publicly. But for atheists, it's not. For example, when I was a member of the Peruvian Secular Society, they inducted as a honorary member a guy that ran a ministry, and he's currently the of one district in Lima. And when you talked with that guy, it was very clear that he was atheist. But since he has a political career, every time he was asked about that, he always said, I'm agnostic. It's harder for an atheist to really recognize because there's a very key aspect of the church when Christianity has demonized, satanized his enemies. It does just by ignorance. Mark Twain used to say that the best antidote for the venom of intolerance was to take a trip. And that's the real thing. The fact is that in Peru, the atheists are a moniker, a label for very bad people, but believers don't frequently have met an actual atheist person. I have a very funny anecdote when I met in Trujillo, a city in the north of Peru, with a couple. They were back then a couple, and this girl talked to me about visiting Lima with boyfriend, and they had a lunch, they had a familiar meeting, and well, they found boyfriend a very charming person. They were very happy with him. The next day, an aunt asked her about boyfriend more details, and when she told her boyfriend was an atheist, her aunt was shocked, and she said something like, atheist? But he looks such a nice person. And that's the key. When there's no contact, we lose. We let the religious discourse, the religious speech to say anything and get away with it. Being in my country, at least in Peru, just to talk about atheism is to be an atheism activist. That's the importance of having legally registered associations, not just circle of friends who join in a bar to chat, something with a more open recognition, because I think that will begin to close that still enormous gap of perception of the atheist in our country. Maybe it's 5%, maybe it's right, but I can recall 1 year before the pandemic, there's a group born in the United States that their name is something like a Catholic Woman for the Right to Choose, more or less. And they run in 3 different regions of Peru in schools, in second level schools. So boys from about 13, 14, 15 years old. And 48% of them declared to have no religion at all. It was a very shocking statistic, but not having a religion is not the same being atheist, but it's very close. It's like a first step. So it will be very interesting to have something like the Pew Research polls here in Peru in order to get deeper in this aspect. But maybe it's accurate. I guess it's higher. The figures are higher than 5%.
I want to say something about the census, that the other surveys. The thing is, we remember that in that census, they have very big methodological problem with the specific questions about their religion and your beliefs. And they didn't separate about non-believers and religious and other religions. So the number 5%, I think, is very wrong about the non-religious person here in Peru.
Atheism was considered a religion.
Yeah, exactly. Many atheist people didn't want to mark as if they were religious because they are not religious. So there was a big confusion. The thing is that the 2 big surveys about that here are the Pew Research and the Latino Barometer. And they both agree that non-religious people here are about 15%. maybe the 5% is more related to the actual atheist community here.
Yes, those surveys can be very difficult. The social and I guess potentially legal barriers remain for people, then it's not in their interest to identify with that. But if 5% at least are willing to, that is progress in itself. And I suspect you're right that the number is probably higher. But I was interested as well to hear this importance of giving people the confidence to be open about who they are and what they believe, and not fear that rejection or discrimination in society as well. Examples you give, I think, are very common ones for someone to say, oh, but I thought you were a nice person, when you say that you're not someone of faith. And it sounds like as we see, quite a funny anecdote, but these things can add up, can't they, over time? And actually, it does mean that people might not feel as comfortable expressing who they are and what they think and what they believe. It's great that you're providing that community and that support for people to say, and hopefully improving the reputation and understanding of what it means to be atheist or humanist or secular in the community. So you took part in the 2025 Humanist Accelerator Program and wowed the judges with gaining the top prize. Could you talk us through what it was like being part of the Accelerator Program? What were your main learnings or takeaways from both working with the organizing team, but I guess also engaging with the other groups from around the world? Adrián.
Yeah, for me, the most important part is that I learned that you can make a social enterprise and at the same time earn money, because I think that the most powerful organizations are the ones when you have people that earn money with that work, because when you have only volunteers in your organization, the things can go wrong very badly.
And Ivan, what was it like working with the international group that were part? As I recall, there were teams from 5 different continents who took part in the accelerator. So did you find there was a lot of similarities with the challenges that you faced, or was there considerable differences?
Yes, the main similarity for me is that people don't even know what is, for instance, humanism, and even less what is a humanist ceremony. So to explain that to the public is very complicated.
Sorry, Ivan, do you want to add as well your comments?
It was very interesting because I already told that we have been talking about having these kind of humanist ceremonies, but that was just a small talk. In this accelerator, I found I was almost shocked by the attention to every detail of making this a very possible venture. So at some moment after the first month, maybe, I started to think to myself, hey, this is going to happen. This is not just an old dream and something we talked about between friends 7, 8, 9 years ago. This is an actual path to really make things happen. And we found that we were really able to do this, that we had contacts, that we had resources, and that this is the moment. This is the right moment to propose this to our society. And in fact, Adrián has talked with a very important wedding planner here in Lima, and she was very interested in the idea. So it's not that we are addressing a very difficult market, because there's no one offering the same services. So we are going to appeal to an unattended niche. So that can be very important for us to start this.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I noticed, obviously, when you were explaining getting recognition and understanding in Peru, that mostly it was about people identifying as atheist rather than agnostic or prefer not to say. And I think that the terms we use can be really important, and the language and terminology in terms of opening people up to discussion can be very helpful. So I wonder, have you found that using the term humanist, particularly when it comes to ceremonies, has at least allowed people to be more curious and open-minded towards the idea than if you expressly say this is a atheist or a non-religious ceremony?
I think this venture will be well received in our society because, for example, we have a very frequent case that is from multi-religious couples. The family from the man is Catholic and the other is Pentecostal or Evangelist or Adventist, and one of the Protestant branches of Christianity, and they are very close. They consider themselves sometimes enemies. No? So, Catholicism is reducing in Peru. It was about 90% many years ago, but since the 90s, it has dropped to 76%. And the religion that spaces are the Protestant branches. So it will be impossible for such a couple to host a religious ceremony for both families. They will start fighting. So a humanist ceremony, a wedding, a funeral, can be important in Peru, not just for the non-believing community. It can appeal to a part of the religious community. So I think it's a nice move. We must do this because we have many ways to succeed here.
It's a really important point. Thank you. Yeah, and it's certainly something that we've seen in the UK, where there are increasing numbers of humanist ceremonies. Year on year, it's becoming more and more common. And that's not necessarily linked, as you say, to more people identifying as humanist. It's more to do with the fact that more people want to have a personalized ceremony or mark an occasion without being defined by one specific denomination of a religion, and particularly where it's a interfaith couple, or if it's marking an individual or a family where they want to be respectful to everybody. Humanism allows you that opportunity. So thank you for sharing that. I think it's a really important point to be reminded of, that it is something that is for everybody. And the other thing that we find as well is, in the UK, at least, most people learn about humanism through ceremonies. So it is a good way to spread, as you were saying, the positivity of saying this is a inclusive, positive, friendly worldview, and not, as you say, you have to be lacking in morality in order to identify or be part of it. So I think that's really important. Now that the program is complete, and obviously you were very successful as being part of the first cohort, what are the next steps, your plan for increasing and promoting the number of humanist ceremonies in Peru?
We have pending meetings and things to do. For instance, photograph session for our publicity, for our advertisement. With Iván, we are planning about that. There is a very nice place here near our neighborhood to take the pictures. And we are preparing some graphical material in general for that. And other things to do is to visiting the funeral homes here, funeral enterprises, to associate us with them. We have a plan to offer some percentage of the earnings to them.
We're waiting for Henry Llanos, the current president of the Atheist Association in Peru. He was present at the last meeting in Luxembourg.
The General Assembly, yeah.
The General Assembly, yes. And he received a recognition for the Accelerator Program. And he's returning to Lima this weekend, I suppose. That is when we will schedule a meeting in order to have the next steps very clear. Of course, the prize will help us to boost our presence in social networks, but we plan to appeal not just to the virtual community, but we have to establish links, as Adrián said, with wedding planners, with funeral homes, in order to have a link with the real world. And then, of course, we can appeal to the non-believing community. I think that each ceremony we conduct this year, we hope to start this year, each ceremony, each step will give us more experience and more publicity. So I hope in the very few months to
And looking
to
further
start this.
ahead, what are your ambitions for APERAT in, let's say, the next 5 years? What would you really like to achieve, particularly with this accelerated ceremonies program?
In general, I think the one main goal to the association is to have some business that can give some earnings to release some projects. We have some pending projects that we cannot release because of lack of money. We don't have paying members in our association, so we only depends on grants and something like that. I think if we had some businesses here that support association, it will be easier for us to release those projects.
You go.
Yeah, for example, and we have some lawyers in our Atheist Association, but it's not completely right to ask them to work pro bono in some legal issues here in Peru, for example, about exonerating your kids from the religious curse. The Peruvian government, the military dictatorship back in 1980, a treaty with the Vatican, it's called a Concordate, and according to that treaty, the Catholic religion must be taught in Peruvian schools. And that's the reality nowadays. In 2010, there was a law that allowed parents to get their kids out of the religion curse just by sending a notification. In many cases, we have been approached by parents that say, hey, but in the school they are asking me for a series of papers and documents, and that's a lie. That's not in the law. The schools asking that papers are breaking the law. But you can't tell one or two lawyers to get in charge of those cases, those controversies. So it would be great, as Adrián says, to have some income generation source, and that will help us to bring a lot of assistance to non-believing community. There's also a recent, the APERAT has launched the psychological therapy service for non-believers, how to guide your sons in a religious world, for example, and how to lead with social exclusion, with anxiety, and those things. The more income we can generate, we can amplify those services.
And if listeners, either inside Peru or internationally, would like to get involved and support what you're doing, where's the best place to find you and get in touch?
In our webpage, there are some links to contact us. If some organization or person wants to donate something, they could do it through that link. We will be happy.
And what's your advice to any listeners out there, maybe in a country that doesn't have an organization like this yet, anyone who's looking to start a humanist group or a campaign to get better recognition? What would be your main advice for finding other people you have managed to do, bringing people together so that you can form a group and start supporting each other as a community?
Our association started as an informal group of people talking about whatever, but with very specific common themes. And I think at the beginning we were a very friendly community who only wants to solve specific issues in our society. For instance, the thing I mentioned a few seconds ago about the issue with the religion course in the schools, other things about the Concordat here. So we have a very specific set of issues to try to solve here. So this was our first drive to form our association. It was, I think, very successful at the beginning because of that. The thing started going wrong when we have issue with one member here and at the beginning. It was very hard to manage the situation with him. That times, Iván and me just went out of the association. We returned a few years ago, but we were out for several years. Yeah. You have to have, I think, ethical code to manage problems with some people that are doing bad things inside the association.
If I take for example, for humanists in other countries that need to start, well, of course, it depends on the country. When we took part in the accelerator, there were guys from Malaysia, and they were, of course, they face a more difficult situation there because countries where Islam is the official religion are very intolerant with dissidents and even are risking their lives in making this kind of association. So we are glad that despite all the difficult things in our society, in Peruvian society today, still have some little chances to do things. You can still do these things here. And we hope that this kind of enterprises and ventures and activities can bring some way to make our society better, because it's kind of funny that Peru has a very difficult geography. We have a lot of climates here, and if you look back in history, geography has determined that many societies have developed in this area of the world known nowadays as Peru, but they were very disconnected. And we are now in the 21st century, and we have a lot of technology, and our society still behaves like being very disconnected, and things like political elections made things more difficult. The last election back in 2021 was really very hard for this country. The Peruvian society, I perceive, I am 59, and I have never perceived our society to be more split between false dichotomies, between two extremes. And well, maybe naturalism and emphasis on evidence can help us to build bridges and to have our great differences. We're very different. There are a lot of ethnical groups in Peru, and we must take these differences as a way to succeed, as a way to make things happen, but we're taking in the bad way. We're using differences as a gasoline for conflict, and that's the wrong way to behave. I hope our society can help about
I think
this.
That's a wonderful place to end, and congratulations again on everything that you've achieved so far. Very excited to hear about all the fantastic plans that you have ahead. Perhaps we'll check in again in the future and hear how you've been growing the community and spreading the positive message. Just before we go, we have our standard closing question that we ask to all of our guests, which is, what's something that you've changed your mind on recently, and what inspired that change? So happy if one of you would like to be brave and offer something.
I really changed my mind. I am always changing my mind about maybe everything. But maybe one of the most significant was changing my mind about the value of changing your mind, or the value of having a humility, intellectual humility. I thought some years ago that intellectual humility was a weaken your thoughts, the way you think. But it's the other way around. When you are more likely to correct your errors, to change your mind when you receive new evidence. And I read some books about that. It was like maybe 4 years ago. I totally changed my mind about that. For me, it was the most important thing. And unless you have a lesion in your prefrontal cortex or something like that, everyone is able to develop some flexibility to allow you to correct your errors.
I think that's a good lesson for us all. Adrián Núñez, Iván Antezana, the team at APERAT, And to your colleagues who unfortunately couldn't be here, thank you once again for your fantastic work, and thank you for joining us on Humanism Now. Thank you very much to all of our listeners. A reminder that if you would like to support what we're doing, you can follow us and support on Patreon. Please also like and share and rate and review the podcast. It really helps us spread the positive message of humanism. And you can find us on all social media at Humanism Now Pod.